of symmetry and repetition as it is in these pictures of the Alhambra. What Escher didn't like in these mosaics was all these pieces of mosaic, well, they didn't mean a thing to him. He wanted to make mosaics, tessellations, with figures that one could recognize as living figures. And this was really an old interest of him that started much more before this, because actually one of his first blocks is this one, in which you see also a repetition. You have to look a little carefully how many heads there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in total. 8 different heads, female and male, and looking up and looking down, and all fitting together. So, but his interest in structure, in fitting of patterns, was, when you look at it, already present in his first work. For example, here, there is actually this pronounced interest in the tessellation of the cobblestones in the street, and the roof, and the houses, and everything. So, for example, here you have one of his tessellations, and it is a very complicated one, by the way. You see it has some sort of fourfold symmetry, and the real symmetry is right in the middle of the figure, where you can turn this around and have 1, 2, 3, 4. When you look at this figure very carefully, would say, oh well, this is not the only fourfold rotation around this point. This is far more evident, these 4 points where these clamshells meet. But now there is a little trick here. Now, as far as shape goes, that is perfectly all right. But as far as design goes, it isn't, because a snail has a mouth and has a tip of its little house, and these are not the same. So actually this shows that when you look very carefully, but it's a little hard to see, these are not real fourfold rotation points. They are only twofold. There's here another figure. This figure was discussed in a scientific magazine, and the man who wrote the article said the black birds are the mirror image of the white birds. And Escher was amused by this statement because it isn't true. And you can see this because the white birds are optimistic, their tails go upward. The black birds are pessimistic, their tails go downward.
Ma vediamo di esaminare un po' più in dettaglio.
But let's try to have a bit of a detailed look at the mathematical properties of some of Escher's mosaics. Here's one. Let's try and reconstruct the design, and let's look at what this outline is, with which we managed to generate the entire figure. To be precise, we start by noticing that if I turn this elementary structure around this point, I end up by reconstructing exactly the same design. And if I turn it once more, I end up with another piece of the design. Another thing I can do is to reflect around these axes, and from this image get this other one that I didn't get by rotating previously, and so on. In other words, with respect to these points, I have a rotating symmetry of the third order.
Una simmetria che in matematica si chiama P3-1M.
Using the rules of symmetry, in particular the groups of plane symmetry, Escher, thanks to his prodigious imagination, creates the various mosaics for which he is justly famous. But Escher is not content to invade only the plane with his drawings. Here you see his figures detaching themselves from the plane to invade space, the third dimension. Naturally, Escher was also interested in solid geometric figures in space. Bruno Ernst tells us how Escher chose one of these in particular for a very precise purpose.
Als Escher een opdracht aanvaarde, dan was het meestal een teruggrijpen.
When Escher accepted a commission, he always used a theme he had already used in his free work. This was quite common, of course, for the people who ordered something preferred to have it à la mode d'Escher, that is to say, something of the ideas they knew from him. When, for example, the Verbliefer, which manufactured cans, etc., for the celebration of their 75th anniversary, ordered an Escher candy box, Escher used a motive that had always interested him.